Good morning, it's Greg Otten here with MaritimeGardening.com, and today I'm going to talk about tomatoes, and I'm going to show some examples of the results that you get with moving tomatoes, transplanting tomatoes, straight seeding tomatoes the way I did this year in my cold frame. So stay with me, let's have a look. Alright, so here we have a garden where I intend my tomatoes to grow, and some of the tomatoes in this garden are transplants that I bought at a garden center, and some of them are tomatoes that I straight seeded in my cold frame and moved into this bed around the same time I put the transplants in, which would have been around the 1st of June or the first week of June. I can't remember the exact date. So if you have a look, here's a tomato that I bought as a transplant. Planted it about a month ago. It's grown maybe an inch. That's hard to tell, but it's about 7 or 8 inches tall right now. Maybe 9 at the most. And same with this one over here. Those are about the biggest ones I have. And they were slightly smaller when I planted them. This is a transplant that I started in my cold frame and moved, and it really I moved it 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it really hasn't grown. It's just adapted to the situation. Very small, maybe 4 or 5 inches tall, which is about the height when I moved it. It's doing okay and it's healthy, it just hasn't grown that much. Over here in this bed here, I believe these are Rutgers tomatoes. I moved these 2 weeks ago from my cold frames, and they're bigger because they were growing for a longer period of time in the cold frames. They're just broader, fatter, healthier. They're about 8 inches tall, but obviously, I mean, the same variety as this really tiny tomato I just showed you, but obviously much happier because they spent more time in the nice heated cold frame. I moved them on a week when we had a lot of rain. So they're doing quite well under this mulch. Much bigger and fatter. Now here we are with the piece de resistance, the cold frame tomatoes. Again, these are Rutgers. So I'll zoom in a little bit more, you can see. But they are a good 18 inches tall, some of them, and they're actually pressing up against the glass, so it's now time to just take the top off the cold frame and leave it off for the remainder of the summer, so I don't have to water them anymore. They'll just get rain. So here we go. Now again, I'm in a northern area and it doesn't really get warm here. You can't even put the tomato where I am anyway. It's zone 6, but it's quite cool here because we're coastal and high elevation. You really can't put tomatoes out till around June. But these ones are much bigger, much higher. I mean, they're twice the size of the ones I moved 2 weeks ago. And the ones that I moved 2 weeks ago were the same size as the ones that were in here at the time. So, you know, moving plants is never favorable to them because they like to just grow where they've rooted, right? Nothing special in the soil here. This is just compost basically, but they're doing really well. These ones are a bit smaller. They're a different variety, and I started them a couple weeks later, but I expect them to catch up, although they're not going to have the benefit of the glass anymore. But there's still a little wind protection in this box, and they do get heat. And you'll notice in this cold frame, I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but the ground, the soil level, the height of the soil is at grade. That is, it's not raised. I've built this as a box so the plants would have room to grow under grass, but I didn't fill it up with soil. Really, the soil that they're growing in is the soil that was there with maybe an inch of good compost added to the top. And I did that because as the water, this is a slope here, it runs this way. As it rains, the water will just run down along the root systems below the soil, along the harder clay soil that's underneath it, and water. So I mean, these rarely need to be watered. I might water these once a week, even under the glass where it gets up to 40 degrees Celsius a day. But they're very, very happy. And I'm just going to leave these in here and let them grow. Right now this is just a box garden with no roof. I'm going to let the rain do all the work. So I'll put a bit of a mulch down, but other than that I'm going to leave this alone for the rest of the year. I'm not going to put a hose on it or anything, and these are going to be fine. This bed over here, I haven't moved these out at all because these are different plants. In this cold frame, get a better angle here, I've got peppers that I straight seeded into the ground onto the plastic in around the same time as the tomatoes, so early May. I don't know if it was the first or second week of May when I put these seeds in. I planted peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants in these cold frames. Why is this one plastic and why is the other one glass? Well, I had a bunch of glass and I didn't secure it properly and it blew away in a rainstorm and it all broke. So I had to go with what I had. I had some plastic kicking around, so I just made these real low budget plastic covers. But anyway, let's get a bit closer here. Peppers are doing quite well. I have to say these are the best peppers I've grown in this location since I moved here. So they're really coming along, and I'm going to leave that plastic over them until they're touching it, just like I did with the tomatoes. They're just not growing as fast because peppers like even more heat than tomatoes. Right? I have to fool these peppers into thinking that it's Mexico in there, right? Because Canada is not prime pepper growing environment, especially where I live here, where it just, because we've got the ocean nearby, it tends to keep things quite cool. So I imagine these are going to be under plastic for at least another 2 or 3 weeks until they're tall enough to touch the roof. And once they are, I'll remove the roof. These are also I think they're called Baby Bell. They're a shorter, bushier type of pepper. I've tried all kinds of different peppers here with varying degrees of success, and I decided to go with a tomato that had the shortest growing season and was the fastest growing and had the smaller peppers, just to see how that would work. And these are straight seeded May 1st, when normally you would never plant tomatoes May 1st here. But under the plastic they germinated and they're growing, and they're quite healthy and they look fine. The eggplants, I won't show you those. Well, I'll show you those, why not? Supposed to keep it 100 here, keep it real. The eggplants have not done as well. They've germinated, and I have some, but there's something in here attacking them. It's probably slugs, I don't know. And I've not been diligent in dealing with them. Anyway, I've got, if you look in here, I'll zoom this up a bit. I've got some eggplants, right? Those larger plants there in the corner, those two in the middle. Those are eggplant. They're all eggplants, but for some reason those two are bigger than the other ones. And I got a couple in the middle there. Those are just some spare tomato seeds I had that I stuck in here. Anyway, and I've got a row of smaller eggplants right here. When they're a bit bigger and I've got a nice warm rainy day, I'll space these out and move them around. So I think in the end there'll be enough eggplants to fill this box. But that's about it. I won't be spreading them out to other places in the garden, and I don't think that's going to work here anyway. I think they need so much heat that they're just going to have to stay in this box until they're big enough to take the plastic off the roof. Anyway, so it works, but I probably should have been a bit more diligent with dealing with the pests here. So just a quick little video on having success with tomatoes, maybe some strategies you hadn't seen before. For my money, for next year, I don't think I'm going to bother buying transplants and all. The cold frame germinated tomatoes are outperforming all the other ones. They're growing better, they seem healthier. Even some of the tomatoes I bought at the garden center actually have a bit of blight. It came that way, and even when I was at the garden center I could see there was blight on some of the leaves, so you got to be careful with that too. You certainly don't want to bring that into your garden. As soon as I noticed it on mine, I broke off all the leaves, all the stems that seemed to have that, and tried to manage it as best as I could, and I think I've got it under control. We'll see how that goes. Sorry, the mosquitoes are quite bad right now. The black flies are killing me right now, so that's another reality of being where I live. It's a lot of black flies, especially when you live next to a forest, and there's actually a swamp down there. So we get a lot of mosquitoes here and a lot of black flies. It's just part of the ambiance, part of the magic of nature, maybe it'll keep the mammals out of my garden, because they don't like black flies any more than I do. Anyway, for my money, if you're thinking for next year, you're a gardener. When you're gardening this year, you're always thinking about next year. You're always reconsidering your strategy and your plan. Boy, these flies are bad. For next year, I'm definitely going to go wholesale on these, starting them outside, straight seeding, under plastic. And another advantage of that is that you get a much broader choice in variety. There's no Rutgers tomatoes transplants at the store. They have a relatively narrow selection of transplants that are just what they've typically sown, or maybe they're plants that tend to do better as transplants. I don't know how they decide what they are going to put out as transplants, but you have much broader variety if you go with starting from seeds. So I hope this was useful. If you enjoy this content, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, maritimegardening.com. Check out my column, Growing Food with Greg, in the Local Express. And until next time, get out there, get at it, try not to get eaten alive by the black flies, and have fun in your garden. Thanks, bye.